So I remember like year one in real estate, I was like, if I can make 80 grand was, I wanted to make more than my teachers who basically said I'd never become anything. F you, I'm going to make more than you in my first year in real estate. So I wanted to make 80 grand and I did. And my goal was make 80 grand, buy a BMW. We always had terrible cars growing up and I did it. And then so your belief starts to grow the more of these things you tick off.
This is the Smart Investor Show with me, Julian Kursagara. Dan Argent, welcome to the Smart Investor Show. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Mate, I normally like to start with just asking our guest about their story. It'd be good to get to understand a little bit more about Dan Argent, the human being.
Yep.
Going back to as a childhood and upbringing and coming through to where you are today.
How far back do you want to go?
Take me all the way.
Yeah, back to birth.
Yeah.
Well, we won't go back that far. I grew up in Brisbane. I had a pretty good childhood, but it's certainly, my childhood was definitely like what bred my hunger. That's for sure. I had a single mum. She worked 3 jobs to be able to, provide for us and, like no dad, etc. So, I really saw that struggle growing up. I sort of decided like really early on that was not the life that I wanted to have for myself. I didn't really know how I was going to do anything as such, but yeah, I just didn't want to struggle, financially through life and the, stress and pressure and angst and lack of kind of control and choice that comes with all of that. So, anyhow, that was kind of like, a bit about my childhood and growing up. I always thought I'd join the police all through school. And my nickname was Sergeant Argent because all I was ever going to do was join the police. And
was that because you were stuck by the rules or you just?
No, I was like the opposite of being stuck by the rules. I was, probably like the opposite of that.
Breaking the rules. Pushing.
I think just like pushing
boundaries.
The boundaries as far as you could go, really. But yeah, anyway, I just had this like kind of passion for joining the police. And I did that in like year 11 when you do work experience. And, we got to drive around in a police car for a week and, pull people over and all sorts of like things. But then kind of like year 12, like my final year, when that's all I'd ever wanted to do, I started to think about the realities of joining the police. They don't earn much, the hours are terrible, and all you ever deal with is crap every day. And something kind of like flicked and I was like, no, actually, I don't want to do that. What can I do now? I've like kind of left this decision till late. Everyone else, that I've gone to school with knows what they want to do and they've been gearing up for it and choosing their subjects. And I've only just like in year 12 gone, oh shit, what I wanted to do, I don't want to do anymore. So then I thought I'll become a lawyer. So after school, I went and did law and I took a gap year through that degree and I moved to London. Actually, 2 things happened that were quite instrumental in my life in London during that year. The first one was that I had an office job. It was like my first time working in an office and I hated it. And the reason that I hated it was because where I was like the top floor in Trafalgar Square and I had stunning views. It was quite amazing, really, the views that I had from the office that I worked in. And summer in London is amazing. Like it's probably like better than most places in the world because everyone just embraces it so much. The pubs are overflowing. Like literally if there's 2 pubs on opposite corners, the crowd's so big on both that like cars can't get through. Like it's just people really embrace it and they embrace the parks.
They've got a few months of long days
compressed.
as well. And
100%. So I'm sitting in this office on these stunning days and I can see out into the park and I'm just stuck in this office and I decided
it's a law firm, as well?
No, I work for the British Council, but it was just working in an office.
Yes.
And so I was like, stuff this, being caught in an office sort of from 9 to 5, the best hours of the day. And look at all, and so I was like, no, I want like an outside job. I want to be able to like get out and about. And that kind of killed the idea of becoming a lawyer. So now I'm like, oh, shit.
You've lost the police force and the law?
Yeah. And the second thing that happened when I was in London was because I'd grown up without any money whatsoever, and we still didn't have any in London, but there was money everywhere. It just, like we lived Zone 1, Edgware Road, worked Trafalgar Square, kind of like really operated in that zone. And there was so much money, like Regent Street, Oxford Street, Bond Street, Mayfair. All this was like pretty much on my way to.
How small is Sydney or how small is Australia compared to?
I just saw wealth. And I'd never seen that before, you know. You saw like designer shops, people coming out, private drivers dripping in, you know, nice clothes, jewelry, nice cars. And it sort of like really opened my eyes to a life that, yeah, I hadn't, all I'd seen was struggle, and I knew I didn't want that. But then I saw this life of like actually success. People had often said you'd be good at real estate. And so I was sitting in my little, you know, office in London, and I emailed someone that I went to school with, their dad actually, who owned a real estate office. And I said, you know, I went to school with your son and I'm living in London and I'm going to move back. And if I, you know, when I move back, I'm interested in getting into real estate. So he said, yeah, sure. He replied, I know who you are. And, you know, let's catch up when you get back. So I moved back to Australia. I caught up with him, and yeah, pretty much soon after I got a job in real estate. So,
so you were now what, 19?
I was 20. I moved to London when I was 19. I moved back when I was 20. Yeah. And so I'd just taken a year off, where I deferred my degree. And I thought, well, I'll take one more year off and defer my degree, and I'll do real estate and I'll just see how I find it. I reckon within the first month, I was like, yep, this is it. I love it. And I could see how to make it work. I felt like I could see something that a lot of other people miss, because the failure rate's enormous in real estate. You know, every man and his dog wants to get into it, thinks they can do it, watches the shows, sees the money that you can make. But something clicked for me really early on, and I worked out, yeah, if you do this right, you can do very, very well. So yeah, that was the start of my career, which has now been going for, I don't know, 22 years or.
Because that is one of the things the younger kids come in, see the nice cars and the nice suits, and well, now it's tight suits and no socks and all that kind of look, and fall in love with that, want to be that, but they don't want to put in that hard work, right? And so what made you different to want to knock on doors and do all the things you had to do back then?
Yeah. Well, I think two things. Or three things, actually. The first thing was that I'd never known anything other than hard work. My mum had 3 jobs. Like, so she'd work all day, and then she'd come home, make dinner, do whatever. And then she had a night job after I'd go to bed. And then she had a stall at the markets on Sunday. Yeah, pretty much like 6 days a week. And you know, so all I'd ever really seen was that. And in my holidays, I used to always work. I was sort of expected. I don't really know what age I started at, like mum's Sunday stall at the markets, but like as young as I can remember. So, you know, maybe 5 or like, I don't know. I'm not sure, but like I don't remember a time where I didn't. So hard work wasn't really an issue for me. No one had ever really kind of directed that like real estate did.
Yeah.
Real estate really like directed that energy and hunger into something like a laser. That was the first thing. The second thing was that the guy that I worked for was quite instrumental really in like the next step that I took. He said to me, you can have anything you want in life if you set goals and work hard. So we've already talked about working hard, but like setting goals, what's this about?
For shit. That age?
Yeah, 20, like, I don't know. And I suppose like that actually like probably as I think about it right now clicked for me in a way, because my mum had always worked hard but never really got anywhere. So I sort of up until that point never really connected working hard necessarily meant success. Because, you know, it wasn't just my mum. A lot of people in life work really hard, much harder than I do, but they just don't ever become successful. Why not? So anyway, this guy said to me, you can have anything you want in life if you set goals and work hard. Okay, talk more about setting goals. So he sort of talked about, you know, mapping out like a 10-year plan or a 20-year plan, whatever. And like sky's the limit. Like you're just writing shit down. So write down whatever you want to write down really, because there's no cost involved in writing it down. You could, I don't know, want a Lamborghini or something. Like you just write it down. There's no cost. So yeah, I like learn about, you know, creating like a 10, 20-year plan and what do you want. I learned about, you know, like breaking that down into like smaller achievable goals now and like in the short term as well. And yet everything like then became about goals, just setting goals, reaching goals. And the interesting thing about that is like you sort of set a small goal, like, you know, I'm going to do 10,000 steps before I can have my first coffee. So that's like a goal, right? So then that's just something easily that you can achieve. And then you might go, you know, I'm going to make 100 calls this week. And if I do, I can go out for dinner on Saturday night. And if I don't, I can't. So these are just like little things. But what they do, they might kind of seem frivolous, but they actually grow your belief, because you think, well, I achieved that and I got that and I achieved that and I got that. And it just becomes like a ladder. And so all of a sudden you're like climbing this ladder, and So I remember like year one in real estate, I was like, if I can make 80 grand, 80 grand was, I wanted to make more than my teachers who basically said I'd never become anything. F you, I'm going to make more than you in my first year in real estate. So I wanted to make 80 grand. That's not gross. People talk about like what they make gross. I wanted to make that after splits and stuff. And I did. And my goal was make 80 grand, buy a BMW. We always had terrible cars growing up, old, banged up Kingswood station wagon things, embarrassing. So I wanted to make more than my teachers who never said I'd amount to anything. And I wanted to buy like my first nice car. And I did it. And then so your belief starts to grow the more of these things you tick off. And the third thing that happened was when I got into real estate, I joined a team. I worked for someone for 9 months before I went out on my own within that agency. And so it was already like running when I joined. And so, basically like, my first weekend, we had open homes and we're like getting sales and stuff like that. And so I sort of saw very quickly a house sell. And the commission was like, I don't know, 20 grand or something like that. And it's like, oh my God, like sell a house, 20 grand, holy moly. But there's like, okay, well, the 20 grand's the appealing part of that. How do you get that? You sell the house. Okay, well, how do you sell the house? You show it to buyers. Okay, well, how do you sort of do that? Well, you've got to list the house to be able to advertise the house and show the house. Okay, so you got to list the house. Well, how do you list the house? Oh, well, you've got to do listing presentations and meet a bunch of people that are thinking about putting their house on the market. How do you get those listing presentations? You make calls and you door knock. And it's like, okay, so if I do more calls and door knocks, that's going to create more opportunities, which I'm going to win a percentage of, which is going to give me more properties to show to people, which I'll sell and get 20 grand. I've got it. That clicked for me pretty early, maybe the first month or something. And so I just figured I'd focus, pretty much solely on that, I'm going to generate more opportunities than anyone else.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't think anyone enjoys prospecting and calling and door knocking, but for me, I just attach to it that actually I'm creating opportunities and this seems to be something that other people don't really enjoy doing. So if, I can do it, I can sort of stand out from the crowd. And yeah, so they were really, I guess, like the first 3 things that happened in that first year in real estate and it all clicked for me and
big first year.
never looked back. Yeah.
I often say to guys in the team, like, what's the worst thing a prospect's going to say to you? It's the worst thing.
Yeah, no.
I can't ring them 3 times in a week. Why not?
Yeah.
They're going to say no.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing they can say. I think all these years I've had someone tell me to, nick off once.
Yeah.
And so that's the worst thing.
Yeah, but even if that does happen, yeah, I mean, they just don't want it now. You know, there's probably like something good that I think I got taught 2 good things about prospecting. Number one is no doesn't mean no. It just means not now.
Correct.
No's just like short for not now. And the second thing is that it's a numbers game. And so I sort of talked about 100 calls a week. And that was my minimum. Actually, like that's another thing, I guess, that I learned during that time was this severe discipline. So I worked for a guy that was ex-SAS.
Wow.
Become real estate agent principal. And that military discipline he applied to this real estate business. And, what was interesting about that was that he never was able to really keep anyone. That agency was a bit of a revolving door of agents. People would come, they'd get trained, they'd leave because it was hard working there, right? It was tough. But what we got taught were excellent skills and insane discipline that, I kind of feel for so many people that don't get taught that. And I remember I was told this is your KPI. It's 100 connects a week, 100 connects, 5 appointments. That's what you need to generate. And you will find out of every 20 connects, 1 appointment, 100, 5. And I remember early on I had to bring my call list in every Monday. Here's what I've done last week. And I don't know, I was on 98 or 99 or something and he throttled me. And I remember him saying, if you can't do 100, you're the wrong person for this job. And my internal dialogue was, F you, I am not the wrong person for this job and I will show you. Well, that's the greatest gift he ever gave me, I reckon, that comment of if you can't do this, you're the wrong person. Because my F you attitude was, well, I'll show you. And you did not bring in your call sheet at less than 100 ever. And I think back over the last 20 years, the number of people that have worked for me and brought me a call sheet at 70, 80, 98. And I just think, how do you get to 98 and go home? I don't understand that. what time is it at the end of the week that you think 98 when my KPI is 100, that's okay? You know, like I'm not.
It's probably worse than the one who got to 70.
Yeah, I'd rather you get to 70 and totally just bomb out than get to 98 and think that's a pass. You know, I've really worked on my leadership style not being the same as my ex-bosses.
It's tricky, isn't it? I struggle with that at times because I probably grew up like you in a bit of a harder edge sword. Didn't really think about going to HR about things. You were told what to do, and sometimes they swore through things at you, and you took it.
You took it, yeah.
And you moved on. Now, you say so one soft, thing, you're in court, shit, and people with stress leave, and then you're in big shit because you can't do much.
Yeah, there was a recent case where a lawyer made someone work for like 20-something hours, and they had to watch this movie at 1 a.m. and then he quizzed them on it afterwards. Like, what lesson did you learn? There was some philosophical point this like lawyer wanted this associate to get out of it. And I saw the article and I said it to all my lawyer mates, and I just said they don't build them like they used to, because that's what we all went through. Now that lawyer sued her boss and won.
Wow.
I've just finished this quite interesting book on this topic though, and it's called Trust and Inspire. And Trust and Inspire is the kind of antithesis from command and control. And command and control kind of like was maybe what we had and what a lot of people had. And it says that trust and inspire is the new way of doing things. And so it's not just don't throw the book at them, don't make them, work 20 hours. But it's what do you replace that with? And it's trust and inspire. And so I've tried to do that. Hey, if you want the life that you dream of, this is how you do it. And then if they don't do it, well, that's kind of on them really, rather than you must do this. Because I think for some reason I responded to that pretty well, but I don't think a lot of other people do. Yeah.
Very true. So mate, I want to talk about UrbanX.
Yeah, sure.
Because that's very exciting about what you're building and especially from a brand perspective. But before we get there, you tell me a little bit, as we are an investment show.
Yes.
You tell me a little bit about your property investment journey, if there has been one.
Property's definitely been where it's been at for me because every time I've sort of delved into shares, it hasn't really gone well.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. But I understand property, and so that helps. I remember meeting this guy that had a menswear store in Brisbane, and it's definitely like nice menswear, good brands and things. But, he drove a Bentley convertible and he owned entire buildings in the city. Like, didn't just own his shop, but owned like the whole building. And I remember he said to me, my retail business is for cash flow. And then I put all that cash flow into real estate. So I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. You just sell shirts and pants and whatever, but you just take all that cash flow, pump it into real estate. You can build all the wealth out of that. So that's really the way that I've seen work and business over the last 20 odd years is, whatever you do is how you make your cash flow, but you make your wealth through investing that. Like my goal was really to buy an investment property per year. And so just keep sort of, loading up. And
at what age did you set that goal? Because we talk about goals when you were in your 20s.
Well, I would have bought my first when I was either 20 or 21, somewhere around that. Yeah. Goal 1 was to buy that BMW. Goal 2 was to buy a property and then just kind of keep going from there. That continued for a period of time, but then I ended up with like millions of dollars in debt, good debt, property debt. I sort of got to the point where I found that all I was really doing was working to service this debt.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, if I could tell myself a lesson, probably that's the point of doing a podcast. If I could tell myself a lesson, it would be just hang on for longer because I look back now at what those properties I bought them for and sold some of them for and what they're worth now. And a
lot of them would have been in Brisbane, right? Which has had a
huge
a wonderful time.
That would be the lesson would be, yes, at that time I was just kind of like everything I was earning was just going to service debt. But if I had have hung on for longer, maybe we'd be in the Caribbean or something like that recording this podcast. I don't think I've made wealth out of business. I think I've definitely, got to where I've got to through investing and property.
And did you just stick with residential? Or you did get into commercial property like the guy with the suit shop?
Yeah, no, only ever residential.
Yeah.
And just because I understood it, and maybe if I did something else, I mean, he wasn't in real estate. He was in, retail. And I suppose that's kind of maybe where the commercial real estate came from.
Yeah.
That was not really like my bag at all. And residential was. I guess like a little story about that. I remember the first week I got into real estate, we went to do an appraisal on someone's house, and me and this guy that I worked for the first 9 months, we walked into this house and he just said, he looked around, he goes, oh yeah, this is what it's worth. And I just remember thinking, how do you know what a house is worth just from walking around it? What the hell? But over the years, or not even years, but sooner than that, you pick it up and you can just like look at a picture of a house and you know what it's worth basically.
Yeah.
So that depth of knowledge around residential real estate served me well, because you could just see a good deal.
That's true.
You can see a good property. You smell a mile away. Good property, good location, good aspect, good deal. You could just see it a mile away.
Maybe a small reno, or potentially it could be a distressed sale that you could probably grab.
Yeah. I've personally never had any experience with distressed sales. I don't know whether that's because I operated in blue chip areas and maybe there's less distressed sales. I actually don't know that, but that's kind of what I assumed. The other thing too that I found was that, even if something is distressed, there's probably a lot of people after it. So for me, actually, the two things have always been, you mentioned a small reno. For me, the biggest thing has always been cosmetic renovations. I have made more money out of cosmetic renovations than anything else, really. Buying something that's in a great location with a great aspect, that for me is like if it doesn't tick those first two boxes, we kind of move on. The location you can never replace. It doesn't really matter. And I guess I did see that through all of the time I've been selling real estate, was that you'd get these great listings and there'd just be so much demand. It was because they were in a great spot. And then you'd get these dog listings that were so hard to sell, but it's because they weren't in a great spot, basically. So you sort of quickly learn that, location's everything. So it's got to be in a great location and it's got to have the right aspect. You do not want something that's, west facing and all sorts of kind of things, really. So that's the first tip. And then the third one is around these cosmetic renovations. Structural renovations are like a bit, it's a money pit. You sort of peel something off and then it's like, oh my God, the retaining wall and the underpinning and the cracks and it's a total money pit. But a cosmetic renovation, if you buy something with great bones, you can do the gardens, you can paint it. You can, pull up the crappy old tiles and lay a timber floor or nice big, tiles, dirty carpet. Yeah. If it's got the carcass in the kitchen's good, but the doors are ugly, you can just pull the doors off, hinge, put the new one on, close it.
These days you can spray them, get them freshly sprayed and bring them back.
Sure. Yeah. If the handles are ugly, they're all standard sizes. You can just go to Bunnings and just get a handle and just straight on. Ugly toilets, put new ones in, framed shower screens, put frameless. Like there's so many things that you can do that are just all cosmetic. Yeah. And you can really do them quite affordably. That's the other thing that I really learned through, my years in real estate. Most people lack the vision to be able to see past the ugliness of something that's tired. And, like a big thing that we would do in real estate to maximize the price of properties is present them really well, clean them up, get the furniture out, bring high furniture in, staging it. Oil the decks, get the external washed, just all these things. Because what I found was that properties that were presented really well would just get so many more people excited about them. And then that would push the price up with competition. And it was just that people lacked that vision, I guess. And so if you can do that, what might cost you, I don't know, 50 grand to turn around, other people might be looking at going, oh, this thing needs 300. And so you turn it around for say 50 grand or some amount like this, and then you go to sort of sell it, and then it's worth so much more, and your market's opened up from this small group that have vision and can and want to take on a bit of work to this enormous group of people that just want to move into something and it's all done.
Yeah, we call those value add deals, and that's why you said part of the strategy session is to understand what lens you see things. And some people can't see that lens. Yeah. And they see changing a shower head as a real stressful thing. Yeah. One of our clients has earned a lot of money through capital growth. Yep. Absolutely flips it when they have to change a tap.
Yeah, right.
But they don't see this side where they've earned 150K. Yeah. They only see this part. They've got to pay $1,000 to do some plumbing work. But that's why we talk about the lens and the risk appetite, right? As you said, there's a risky appetite there.
Yeah. But the value add's a great point. And so it's got to be in a great location. It's got to have the right aspects. And for me, you've got to be able to add value to it. Otherwise, you are just riding the wave of capital growth. And my view on that is everything's riding the same wave different waves in different locations, of course, but you're still kind of riding the wave.
The waves don't last forever.
Yeah.
And, you see it in Brisbane where we had 8 years of no growth.
Yeah.
And then we hit 2019 or so and we picked it up.
Yeah.
But sometimes if you're buying at the beginning of that no growth and you're sitting there for 8 years, as you said, sometimes you have to sell things just to get out of it.
That's right. Yeah.
So, mate, thank you for those tips on your journey. But now let's get into UrbanX. The Smart Property Show is proudly brought to you by Search Party Property, nominated by REB as Australia's best buyer's agency and buyer's agent for 2025. Looking for your dream family home, a prime commercial property, or a smart investment? We've got you covered. Unlike others, we don't rely on selling agents or property managers. We have boots on the ground in key investment cities across Australia. Powered by data-driven insights, we give you the edge to secure the best deals. Ready to invest smarter and grow faster? Contact Search Party Property today for a complimentary discovery call. Now, obviously, I've been watching you from the sidelines and seeing this brand, and you talk about branding a lot, which I'm really interested in. But tell me about how you reimagined the real estate game about building brands.
That really is an extension of that story that I started earlier. So I ended up working for that guy for 7 years. I was the only one that stayed.
7 years, and you said it was a revolving door.
It was a revolving door except for me. And people would come and go, but I don't know, the discipline kind of worked to a degree. And also like I was just making more money and more money every single year. And I set these goals and I'm achieving them. So
was that the nickname I heard, $1 Million Dan? Was that one of the nicknames that you had?
The $1 Million Man.
Yeah, not Dan.
The $1 Million Man. I got named. Could have been Dan, yeah. And it was the $100 Million Man. Yeah, because at that point, I'd done 100 million in deals. And so I got called on $100 Million Man in the paper. Yeah, so I worked there for 7 years, but that journey came to an end when a couple of things collided. The first one was when that $100 Million Man article came out when I won Queensland's #1 agent.
Right.
So I won that, and then the newspaper did the story, and at that point I'd done 100 million, and so that's how that came about. When that article came out, I had $10 million worth of call-in business that week because I'd built my career on prospecting, door knocking, all of that 100 calls, 5 appointments a week, that discipline. But then this article comes out and people call me and it was worth $10 million, these deals in a week. And I was like, people are just calling me, oh, hey, I've seen this article. Can you come around and talk to us about selling? And I'm like, oh my God, like this is cool. What's this about? Because I don't know this. I've just been taught this discipline, prospecting, door knocking, and it never changed for me. Like the whole 7 years, 100 connects, you got to do it every week. And so I was like, hey, there's something here. You can attract this business to you rather than always chasing business. And so, I started putting together a bit of a marketing team and like putting myself out there a lot more. And that was one of the first times that I kind of started to feel a bit hemmed in by where I was.
Right.
Hey, what's all this? It's starting to
sticking your head out too much.
Sticking my head out a bit too much, And I remember this comment like, no agent's brand is ever going to be bigger than the agency's brand. And I just thought, man, that is such a backwards way to think, because at that point I wasn't looking to go anywhere. Therefore, the bigger my brand got, the bigger the benefit.
You were really happy, not moving anywhere.
Yeah.
Very proud of your rewards.
Yeah.
And then these conversations started to happen.
Yeah, and you sort of think, oh man, like I can see an opportunity here, and I can sort of see that I'm being a bit hemmed in. So that came up, and then like a few months later, it was end of financial year, and I got my group certificate, and that year I'd done 700,000 in fees, and like that's nothing now, but this was in 2009, I think. So it was a long time ago now, and back then it was a lot. Right. So, but I'd earned 700 gross, and then the agency that I worked at, it took 40%. I think I was on 60. They took 40. So out of 7, so 140. So it's 280. So 420. And then I had to pay for my own assistant. So 420 came down to like 350. And then super came out. So that was like 320, and then I paid tax on the 320, and so I think I like earned like 170 or something like that.
Wow.
So I just remember thinking, and at this point, up until this point, I'd been buying an investment property every year. I had all of this debt, and it was costing me 10 grand a month to service the debt. So I'm making 170, which I don't know, 170 divided by 12. Maybe is that like 15 or 14 or something like that, but 10 of it straight away committed. And, you know, what happened like 2010 period, GFC, sales started to slow down.
Yep.
And then next minute, like I'm struggling just to service this debt.
And you couldn't pull equity out because you're not getting growth in some of the areas if you were heavily invested.
That was true, yeah.
In Brisbane potentially.
Correct, it was true. Yeah, I was just kind of thinking, man, this financial deal sucks. Because I'm like probably never going to achieve those goals that I set when, you know, at this point 7 years earlier. And I can see that, you know, like I started when I was 20, I'm like now starting to approach 30. I was 27, but I could see 30. And I'm like, I'm not going to get to where this sort of sheet of paper that I wrote all my goals out says I'm, you know, want to get to. And this financial deal sucks. And so I looked at it and I needed my assistant, and, you know, buddy, tax and supers just like death isn't, you know, I mean, it's guaranteed.
Got to do it. Yep.
But there was this big chunk, like around 280 grand out of my 700 that was just going to the agency that I worked at. Now, when I first started, I knew nothing and I knew no one. And I also wasn't making that. So the amount that you were kind of losing, it made sense. But as that number became bigger and bigger, it no longer made a lot of sense. And so I thought if I leave, I thought if I can do similar numbers, I'm going to make way more. And even if I halve, I'll make the same. That's what it worked out to be.
That's the worst case scenario.
That was the worst case scenario, was that I halve, because, you know, then I'm making 350 and I've just now got to pay for my assistant and some tax and stuff. And I'm still going to be
in a big office or anything like that.
No. So like literally I could do halve and still be on the same wicket, but then at least I'm building something for myself. So when that's like your kind of fallback position, it's a pretty good spot. So early 2010, I resigned and I launched my own agency. They were the two main things, really. Number one was that I was held back from being able to like build this brand and marketing, etc. And secondly was, the financial deal kind of sucked at a point in time. So I went out on my own and I ran my own agency for the next 7 years. And it was honestly like everything that I've ever wanted and more.
Oh,
it was so good. You know,
would have been a big deal. Sorry to butt in. When you left, it would have been a big deal, right? For the owner.
Massive. Yeah. Massive.
And the staff, because you would have been obviously the leading.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it was
quite, I would have thought, for you as well.
Yeah,
like
it was
personally,
super tough. Yeah,
wasn't it?
Yeah,
easy decision. You would have been quite sad to do it, but excited in the same way.
Yeah, totally 50-50, you know, totally 50-50. And the other thing too was that like I honestly thought that failure was a very real possibility. Because at that point I'd never worked anywhere else. So you believe in your own ability, but you also don't know how much you're being propped up by where you're working. So that weighs on you. You know, I had sort of two thoughts around that. Number one was, well, even if my business halves, I'm still going to make the same amount of money. So that's not really that bad. And two, if it's like worse than halving and it's like this thing tanks, I'll just give it 6 to 12 months. You know, at this stage I'm 27. So even if it's a crap 12 months, it'll be a blip on the long-term radar and I'll just go back somewhere else and I'll be okay. So I didn't kind of think I'm going to do this and that's it, like burn the boats. I was not burn the boats.
I'm sure some of your pedigree and reputation, you probably would have had a few people knocking as well, potentially.
Oh, it was nonstop. Yeah,
if you had to go somewhere else.
Yeah. It was nonstop offers. Yeah, that's kind of where you sort of thought, well, someone's going to take me. You know, one of these people that's calling up all the time is going to take me. Yeah. So anyway, so it was everything that I ever wanted and more. Honestly, I didn't halve at all. I actually set a goal in the first year to do the same number as what I'd done previously, and I hit it. And you know, went and bought a Rolex, which was like one of my goals, and it was just really a trophy for surviving, to be honest.
Now you don't even wear it.
And I don't even wear it. I kind of don't wear anything anymore. But I set that and did it. And then that first year gave me the confidence, oh, you can do this. So then I went and opened an office, started bringing on like a team, and it just kind of compounded and grew every single year from then on out. You know, added property management, which was like a total no-brainer because you can't really have your own rent roll when you work for someone else, but when you do, you can. So we grew that to over 300 properties. And that kind of assessment that I had early on, which is I'm going to be keeping way more of this. And then if I can keep way more of it, actually what I decided was if I can keep way more of it, what I'm going to use that money for is to pay off those properties. I kind of got jacked of this, borrow sort of the full amount on everything, have heaps of debt, but rely on capital growth because I wasn't getting the capital growth, not to the kind of level that, was going to make me rich. So that extra money that I'm making, I'll just pay off.
I'm assuming they were interest-only loans?
They're all interest-only,
yeah.
So I wasn't even paying them off, But I just thought, well, I kept them on interest-only, but you could make payments.
Top-ups,
So, I effectively, just took that extra sort of 200, then 300, then 400, 500 grand a year extra that I was now getting by working for myself. I kept my lifestyle the same, kept my living expenses the same, didn't change my lifestyle even though I was earning so much more, but I just put all of that money onto those properties. And then I paid the first one off and then paid the next one off and then paid the next one off. And then that became like the next game for me was how quickly from the time I buy a house can I pay it off? So, bought this one property. It was over $1 million. It was the first time I'd actually ever spent over $1 million because my home was worth over $1 million, but I hadn't bought it for over $1 million. So I bought this house for over $1 million. I'm like, man, imagine if I could pay this off in 2 years. So I worked out how much I'd have to pay off every month to pay it off in 2 years. And I was like, if I can do that, I'm buying myself another Rolex. That's, this is like years later. So I paid it off in 23 months and the 24th month amount sort of bought me this other Rolex that I also don't wear. But it became quite addictive really. So anyway, so I got through that and that was all really positive. But the downside to it all was that I just completely burnt out through those years, like entirely burnt out, because what I was doing was that I was operating at the highest level in like real estate, and this is now sort of 6 years ago, and I was doing over $1 million. There were only 30 of us doing over $1 million at this point in time. Now it's probably the equivalent of, 3, 4 or 5 million, something like that.
Okay.
And so it was like, I was operating at that level, but then also running the business. And when I say running the business, that kind of what I'm saying is managing staff. Yeah. And that was the hardest, most time-consuming, stressful part of the whole thing, especially when you're busy, right? Like if you're not busy, that kind of is what you become busy doing. But I was busy making bank, and then I had to like fit in managing all these people and their BS and calling in sick on Mondays and quitting at short notice and just stuff. People are like herding cats. After 7 years of running this business, I was overweight, divorced, miserable really, but I'd done super well financially. And so I just thought, man, there's got to be a better way to do this thing. What sort of hit me was how could you actually have your own business, which is better, and your own brand and being able to market yourself and have that freedom and flexibility and control, but without the hard parts, running it and managing it. It's kind of a bit like getting Lewis Hamilton to drive the race, but also manage the pit crew. Hey guys, I'm coming in now. Guy number 1, I need you on this, and 2, he's not managing that. But imagine having to think about that. That's what it was like operating at a high level and managing the team. So I thought, well, we've already got a team. What if we sort of just offered the service of that operational back end part? What if we offered that as a service to other people so they could have their own business, but they just didn't have to do that because we're already doing it. If we're doing it for ourselves, we could surely do it for others as well. So we kind of took on a couple of guinea pigs. We had 9 in the first instance, 9 businesses that we looked after their business for them.
So you didn't actually shut down
your
agency?
All the agents that I had were guinea pigs. So I sort of went in one day and I said, right guys, this is what I've come up with.
Yep.
And I want to help all of you to start your own businesses. And they were like, what the hell? And I was like, yep, you get your own brand. We'll do it all. We'll run it. Nothing changes. You just get to have your own business. And
so you were UrbanX back then as well?
We were urban property agents. Yeah. Right. And so urban property agents effectively sort of made its way into UrbanX, and those 9 agents became our guinea pigs. And they
that makes sense.
So then they started to launch and we were looking after them. And then people were like, oh my God, that person's left in. Oh, hang on a sec. No, they haven't. What's this? Powered by UrbanX. What's that about? And then so we started getting these inquiries from people initially all over Southeast Queensland. And then that kind of spread. And then, people in New South Wales and Victoria and Tasmania and WA and all these people just, I guess, started to see other people that were doing it and they loved the brands. That was a big thing. We're big on doing very sexy brands, websites. Like if you're going to go independent, you can either look shit or you can look amazing. Why choose shit? A lot of investment goes into that. And so everyone that we launches, like they look really good. And so that probably gets more eyeballs on them and then they do well. because the reality is like I did well when I went out on my own and trying to manage everything. They're out on their own and they don't have to manage everything. And now you've got Instagram and YouTube and TikTok.
That's right.
And
Wasn't there, right?
Wasn't all there. So, I got all those calls from a newspaper bloody thing that newspaper doesn't even exist anymore. So, nowadays it's so much easier. Yeah. So it sort of it grew from there. So yeah, I mean, where the idea came from was I had my own agency. It was amazing, but not. And it was, how can you have the best of both worlds? How can you have your own agency and your own brand, but not have to be weighed down trying to run it all yourself at the same time? And that's kind of like where that partnership model
came How many agents have you got on board now?
Brands or companies? Yeah. So there's 105 companies that we work with around the country.
So you've got a big back end running all this.
Yep.
It's a lot of staff.
Yep.
You said one of the things that, but I guess the difference now is
I'm not selling.
You're not selling.
Yeah.
You're not running at such a fast pace.
Yeah. There's a couple of things. That's one, that I'm not selling. Two is that I've got a business partner in this that assists enormously. Her job is chief people officer, and that's largely what she does. Not a lot of the BS gets to me.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that we've got, which has been developed from within, this incredible leadership group now within the business. I didn't have that in the business that I worked at, and probably in a small business, you don't end up with a leadership group.
Correct.
We have an entire leadership group now in our business that pretty much we've grown all of them. I think we've only ever brought two in. One was quite a specialty and one we did have to bring in. But other than that, everyone's just grown over the years. And so there's such a depth of experience now that most things just get looked after, by them. They're now managing their teams. And probably the downside to that is the only things that ever get to me are the worst things now, like the absolute.
Tell me some good news.
Yeah. No, I don't get good news. The only things are just they're the things that have passed every layer before me that no one else can or wants to
break
deal with.
Break the glass and give it to dad.
Yeah. And so then break the glass. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, so that's going back to goals. That was from the right at the outset. We talked about setting your 10-year goals and 20-year goals. What's the goal for UrbanX? Must be one. I'm sure you're a goal setter.
Yeah. Well, we want to work with 1,000 partners. We want to help 1,000 people to start their own business. And I mean, to be honest, I'd love to help every single person start their own business because I truly believe it's such a no-brainer. Like I am so passionate about it because I've done it and I was scared of doing it. But then I did it and it was amazing, except there were parts that weren't, but we fixed that. And so I'd love to help everyone do it. But you got to set a goal, you got to start somewhere, and probably everyone is unrealistic. So we've set 1,000. But the thing that makes 1,000 a bit more challenging than that might sound is that we made the decision to just work with really high performing agents. There are about 50,000 agents in Australia, but 40,000 of those 50,000 do less than 250,000 a year in gross commission income, GCI. 40,000 out of 50,000 do less than that, which is quite astonishing.
Or even 80-20 principle, which normally works in most businesses.
Because if they're on 50-50 of that too, they're kind of making 125 pre-tax, pre-super, and probably working really hard. You should, honestly, if you're making 250 or less in real estate, you should just work at, I don't know, somewhere, do something else. Real estate's too tough to earn that kind of money. So out of the 10,000 that are remaining that do above 250, that's our niche. And so, 1,000 out of 10,000 is it's a pretty large number.
Yeah. But I'm assuming they go through quite a strict interview process and present to you because you want them to be successful.
Yeah.
And you want them to achieve great goals.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it's not just apply because you're creating so much wealth. It's
Yeah, we've learned so much over the years. We've been going for, basically 6 years now. And gosh, we've learned so much about, who's going to make it, who's not going to make it, what's it going to take. We've had a lot of, duds, for lack of a better word, that thought it was a silver bullet. There are no silver bullets. I mean, someone said to me the other day, it's like a get-rich-quick scheme, but not, and it actually is. It actually is a get-rich-quick scheme, but not in the kind of bad way that comes across. And it's also not without the hard work. It 100% though is a get rich quick scheme if you just do the work.
That's right.
Right? That's the recipe. We've had guys, oh man, so many. I mean, just last month, one of our clients who, when he first started, he's just over 250. Like he only just kind of met our threshold, but he was keen and we were keen. And, you know, he sent me a screenshot the other day, and it was like deposit. And it was all the deposits that had hit his account that day. He must have had a big settlement week or whatever. And he'd made more on that day than he was making per year before he joined us. Wow. You know, and obviously it wasn't made in a day because it was made over a period of time, but he's certainly making per month what he used to make per year. And like, he's only one of that. We've got another client who was making $1 million a year before he joined us. Now his business is doing $1 million a month. Yeah. You've got to do the work, right? It's not the secret spices. And we have certainly met people that think, oh yeah, I'm going to leave this franchise and start a business on my own brand, and I'm just going to be rolling in it. I don't have to do anything. That is the opposite of true. But it's a huge accelerator, honestly. If you have your own business, your own brand, and you market the hell out of yourself, it's the biggest accelerator that I've ever become aware of in business.
It's a good segue. I mean, you've talked a lot about mentors, and you've talked a lot about positive attributes to be successful. And you just mentioned you've got a few stars, and a lot of stars. Maybe tell me 2 things that makes those people star. What's the difference? Why are they successful?
A lot of hunger. Yep. Yeah. And I don't even know if there's, you know, hunger and resilience really would be the 2 things.
That burn in the belly, right?
Yeah, you
don't have that.
Yeah. And there's a real, you know, lesson in parenting now around that, because how do you make sure your kids have that burn in the belly? I had it for all the reasons that I've talked about, and all the guys that I'm like kind of referencing now kind of have it for similar reasons. There's not many that haven't had some kind of hardship in their life, and they're just running so far away from that to a life that they would prefer that, yeah, they work really, really hard. And so that's the first thing. And the second thing is resilience. Like, the more you want to achieve, I think the more you're going to get knocked down, the more setbacks you're going to have, the more, I don't know, like people talk about the universe and vibrations, and I'm not, but you know, just imagine it and it'll happen. Manifestations. I don't know. I find the more you try and do, the more the universe is like, do you really want this? And you're going to get that pushback, and you've got to push through that. And I think success is really imbalance. That's kind of what success is. It's imbalance. Your success is out of balance. And so you kind of have to be working harder than the average Joe, but also get back up so much quicker. I was just having a conversation yesterday with someone, and he admitted, this is not one of that group, he admitted that if he has a setback in a day, it pretty much wipes him out for the day. Yep. He really struggles to get back on that horse after getting, you know, bucked off. And that would be, other than the hunger, the number one thing that separates those that make it versus those that don't is the speed at which you get back.
It's true. That's right. I'm interested what you said about you didn't say flow. I forget the word you used, but it's kind of like being in flow. Yeah. And sometimes we get those bumps. And I'd say the first quarter this year for me, I wasn't in flow. Yeah. Because shit happened, which we didn't write down as a goal. Yeah. I had some great goals for this, and it just got blown away because of staff. Yeah. And it really threw me out. Yeah. And I feel like I'm just getting back into that flow now. Yeah. It's taken me a while because I just had to, you know, it was that emergency brake glass button got pressed and you had to drop everything. Yeah. So it's very true.
Yeah. I think the speed at which you get back in flow, get back on the horse, whatever, the speed at which that happens is key in my opinion. And really it's key because of momentum. We can talk about flow. I'm more interested in momentum. Yep. Momentum for me is everything in business. If you're in momentum, that's when I think things become easy, or maybe that's when you become in flow. And being out of momentum, it's a bit like a car, you know, you break down on the side of the road and you know, sort of get a bunch of guys and they come and they push it, and it's bloody hard to get the thing moving. But once it's moving, like, it's actually hard to stop it. Yeah. And that's really what I think business is like. And so, you know, when I see people stop, start in business, you know, oh, something bad happens. Oh, I'm going to have a pity party for a week or whatever. They're just, momentum's just constantly stopping, really. Yeah,
very hard. I always say you don't want to be playing catch up business, right? You want to start the year hard.
Yeah.
I try to always be around in January because that's our busiest month from phone calls and leads.
Yeah.
Because everyone's sitting on the beach thinking about property.
Yes.
And so I want to be around to capture that, and as you build a team up, you can get some help around that. But once you get that momentum at the beginning of the year, it carries through.
Yes.
But if you want to start catching up in March, because everyone comes back in Feb, and then we'll kind of have a few little launches and things like that, and you start working hard in Feb or March.
Yeah.
Well, good luck trying to build that momentum.
And particularly because you're always operating in competition, there is always someone trying to eat your lunch. And so, what I found in real estate was that I used to not come back until after Australia Day. And then I found, maybe a week earlier because everyone came back Australia Day. So I was like, I come back. And in the end, I was back 5th of January and I had properties launching. And, my first auctions were like when other agents were just coming back. So that's the point I'm trying to make is that most people operating in competition as well. And therefore there'll be someone else that's hungrier than you, starting earlier than you, more aggressive than you. And so not only are you out of momentum, someone else is in momentum. So it's actually like a double whack, really. Yeah, you've gone back, they've gone forward. That gap's like opened up.
Good insights. Thanks for that. Now, mate, last question. I know you're not selling these days, but you're across the landscape of real estate in a deep way, across the country as well. What do you see the landscape looking like for, let's say, this year, the next 6 months? Got through the election. We've had an interest rate cut. What are you hearing? Because you're hearing a lot of buzz on the street with your agents across Australia. What are you hearing? How do you feel about the investment, particularly the investment landscape?
I think that firstly, one of the key insights is the number of properties that are on the market have been declining every single month. And so that really pushes all of the group of buyers into less properties, which creates more competition. And so more competition is what pushes prices up. And so, what I'm going to sort of say to you is like my real advice that I'm giving to, family members and loved ones. I'm literally telling my goddaughter to buy a property and buy a property as soon as she can, because I can see that there's going to be more competition. There's obviously government interventions that are coming as well, which are going to pump more money into the system. And I think that you are really, and we've got this huge shortage of properties. That everyone knows this. You've got a huge shortage of properties. So that's just supply and demand. And that means, in my opinion, property prices are going to start to accelerate, particularly because we're on an interest rate declining cycle, not increasing cycle. So we're off the peak and we're coming down the other side. And what pace that happens at doesn't really matter to me, because it's all about confidence. And so if there's 1 cut, 2 cut, 3 cuts, we're heading in the right direction around interest rates. So that's really like what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that, we're in quite a good opportunity at the moment where rates have only just started to come off, cost of living still high, people are under pressure, and I don't think there's the full demand that we're going to see maybe later this year or next year for property, and the competition that'll then really drive prices up. So I think buying in the next 6 months is a really good idea, and that's certainly what I'm telling loved ones to do, not just general punters. Yeah, that's the first thing. And the second thing is around where and what to buy. In terms of where to buy, my view is buy as close to a city as you can. And so, if you can afford 3 Ks from the CBD, great. If you can afford 10 Ks from the CBD, great. If you can afford 15 Ks from the CBD, great. Whatever you are doing, just try and get as close as you can, because there's always going to be people working in the city, and commute time's always going to be an issue, and people just always want to be as close as they can. The way I look at those geographic areas are, look where's popping off right now, and just go the next suburb out from that. If you can't afford the one that's popping off right now.
What we call the ripple effect.
The ripple effect. Because, what'll happen is that area will start to price people out, and then people will be like, let's go to the next area out. And you probably find that one band out, literally could be the adjoining suburb, that one band out has properties that aren't as sought after, areas that you can just see, with a few cosmetic renos through this area is going to look amazing. Yeah. And that's what happens. People get priced out. So they go a suburb out. They all start to buy these things, these properties that don't necessarily look amazing. They start to do them up, take pride in them, paint them to the gardens. Cafes start to open up in the area. And all of a sudden, a Bunnings pops up and it goes off. So, I wouldn't really personally be too concerned about, what city it was. I'd just be as close to the city as I could, and I'd buy as close as I could afford, just out of maybe where's popping off, because that's probably the next area that's going to really pop off. And then thirdly and finally this is just my view, would be to buy something that you can add value to, because otherwise you're just riding the same wave that everyone else is riding. And if you buy a property for $800,000 and it goes up to $1 million, every other property in that area has gone up from 800 to $1 million. So are you really more wealthy? In a way you are, but also in a way you're not. So, but if you can buy something for 800 and you can spend a bit of money on it and make it worth, so say you spend 50 and now it's worth 1.1 or 1.2 after that same wave, that's actually where you have separated yourself from the wave that everyone else is riding. Yeah. So that'd be my 3.
Thanks, mate. It's great chat. We could probably go for another hour, but we were not allowed. We better get going. Good to catch up as always, and I really appreciate having you on.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Dan. If you enjoyed the show, it'd mean a lot if you could take a moment to rate and review it on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us reach more listeners like you. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again, and I'll catch you next time.